please sit down. Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. For every budding student eager to prepare themselves for tomorrow, we present to you DAKSH 2022. Members of the audience, a very good morning to one and all present here. Christ University is proud to welcome you to this edition of DAKSH, the annual flagship event of the university. I am Kalaila D'Souza and I will be your MC for the day. DAKSH, the annual education and career guidance fair, hosted by the Student Council of Christ deemed to be University, is a one-stop destination for all things education. At DAKSH, you get to witness exclusive opportunities, imperative student guidance, acquire varied knowledge, and make informed choices regarding your education and your careers. Without any further ado, we present to you today's session on IT staffing. We are beyond honored to have amidst us today Mr. Vijay Sivaram, our esteemed speaker for today. Mr. Vijay Sivaram is a seasoned sales and consulting professional who has over 18 years of experience in areas of workforce management, technological staffing services, asset facility services, and GIG workforce. Mr. Vijay currently serves as the CEO for the professional staffing and recruitment business operations. He has also been a founding team for Quest Corp since its inception in 2007. And throughout his tenure at Quest Corp, he has been instrumental in driving business in the areas of recruitment, temporary staffing technology, call center outsourcing, facility management, engineering services, and much more. Sir, it is an absolute privilege to have you here at DAKSH, and we will request you to kindly take the dais.
Am I audible? Can you hear me up there? I was told that this is the last session for today. So I'm possibly between all of you and lunch. Okay, so I'll try to finish it off fast. But more importantly, I think I was also told that you had sessions from yesterday and today. So you all know Queen Elizabeth, right? She's 95 years old. The person who helps her most is a private secretary. Now, I think her 10th private secretary is working with her right now. So I feel like the 10th private secretary, meaning I know what to do here, but there's so many people who have come and done and spoken to all of you in the last 2 days. Now I have to try to make it look better and I have to say something better. So I hope I can do that, but I'll try to get it going. So this is just going to the ear. Just give me a second, guys. Problem with the glass, I guess. Okay, so I'll just tell you a little bit about me first. I come from a town called Cochin. How many of you are from Cochin here? There must be a few, I'm sure. All right, so I come from a small town called Cochin. I grew up in Cochin. After my schooling, I had a chance to come to Chennai, did my college in Loyola, and after I finished Loyola, I joined GE. It was my first job of sorts. I was working in Hyderabad. After working in GE, I decided to move to, then I moved to Malaysia. I joined the ADECO group, which is a recruiting company. It was the world's largest recruiting company. I joined them. Here I was largely taking of hiring and recruiting people, and I visited Christ in those days to hire for companies like Google and all of them. And after ADECO, I joined this company called Quest. Now, in 2007, when we when I was with Adeco, a couple of us, around 7, 8 of us, decided to join together and start a new company. Now, unlike today, in 2007, the word entrepreneur was not a very fancy word. In fact, I would never go tell anyone that I was an entrepreneur because I was 27 years old at that time, and nobody really knew or would believe me that I started a company. So I would never go around and tell people that I started a company. But that company today is India's largest employer. So Quest today houses 4,22,000 employees. We are not very far from you. In fact, I just work one road away from you. And Quest houses employees across 10 countries. And this company today is listed in the stock exchange. And so to give you an example of what we do, how many of you have Samsung phones here? Raise your hand. So when you walk into a Samsung store, the person who sells you the phone is an employee of Quest. When you walk into a Bata store, when you walk into a Panasonic store, you walk into a Louis Philippe store, you walk into a W store, most likely you're talking to an employee of Quest. Whenever you get a call from the call center from Airtel, Vodafone or Jio, again, most likely you're getting a call from someone in Quest. When you order something out of Amazon or Urban Ladder or any of these e-commerce sites, the person picking up the call, the technology behind the website, the person packing your product, and the person delivering your product, most likely an employee of Quest. When you buy, I don't know how many of you take loans, but when your parents take loans, again, the documentation person who collects your loan documents is an employee of Quest. So we are India's largest employer, around close to 4,50,000 people today. Then somewhere in between, while I was working with Quest, I moved to Malaysia and the Philippines. So you see that nice green patch of islands there. I moved to the Philippines. I set up the country over there. I went there to build Quest's operations there. After that, I moved to Malaysia, the Twin Towers. I worked out of there for a couple of years. And then after that, I'm back in Bangalore with Quest. And during this journey, I thought it was important that I revisit education. So I went to INSEAD. INSEAD is one of the most finest MBA institutes in the world. Had the privilege to learn in INSEAD. And now I'm back in Bangalore. I'm one street away from all of you as such. I work down the road. Now, what I'm going to do today is possibly just take you some snippets of thoughts on how each of you could look at your careers, because all of you come from different streams. I was told across from PCM to computer science. So I'll try not to stay too technical. You will see two things coming out of the slides. Can you read the slides from there? Doesn't really matter, does it? So you will find two things in all my slides. One, you'll find a Dilbert comic strip in all my slides. Has anyone in this crowd read a Dilbert before? Do you know who Dilbert is? Nobody. So newspapers functionally don't activate over here. So I'm assuming it's functionally just the apps that work. So Dilbert's possibly the most closest in the cartoon world to corporate office cultures. So those who enjoy satire comedy that happens within an office, or if you guys want to know what really happens in an office at the back, you should read Dilbert. So I won't read through the Dilbert comics. That's for you to read if you can. But I'll just take you through these images. The second thing that you will find, I hate content, not content writing per se, but I hate writing paragraphs. I was never good at it in college too. So I will take you through some pictures and explain those pictures to you as well. So the first slide that I want to talk about is how jobs has kind of changed over the years. Most of your parents or maybe grandparents had one job throughout their career. Most of you. And most of your parents, or maybe your elder brother or elder sister, would have had a job in a private company, possibly. And your cousins, your elder brother, elder sister, would have had more than one job in the private company. Today, you have people who offer you jobs, 3-4 jobs, and there's a gig job. I know a colleague of mine who's a software engineer, but he works as a Swiggy driver in the evening. Right? So today you have gig workers, you have people. So the whole world, the whole concept of a job is very radically shifting. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone will stay away from government jobs, or that also doesn't mean that everyone's going to become a gig worker. What is happening in this whole journey is that you find different layers of people and different layers of careers. You will find amongst each one of you someone who's interested to stay in the government sector. I'm told the previous presentation was about getting into IAS and IFS. So there will be a bunch of you that will look at getting into the government as a sector. There will be a bunch of you that will say, no, I want to work in the likes of Google, Infosys, Wipro in my job, and I want to build my career there. Some of you are going to say, no, for me, money is important. So I will keep shifting jobs every 3 months or every 1 year to make sure that I keep getting more and more money. Some of you are going to say, no, I want to just follow my passion, but I need a steady income, so I'll do a job, but I'll parallelly do painting, or I'll get into cultural arts, I'll get into theatrics and stuff like that. So many of you are going to go that journey as well. So in many ways, what is going to happen to all of you in the next 2 to 3 years is to help define, or you guys need to figure out what kind of jobs are you going to look for. And none of them are good, none of them are bad. They're all equally something which has pros and which has cons. And those choices of being, to choose which one, all depends on only you and nobody else. And I think while you will have peer pressure, you will find some of your friends getting 50 lakh salaries, 10 lakh salaries, etc. Somebody of you will become a great cinema actor or an actress. Some of you would say, no, I got into IPS. So this peer pressure will exist. All of you will be in a mode of comparison at some point of time. But my point to all of you is that one should not be stressed on it. It's good to get compared on. It's good to compare yourself, because that's how you improve. It's how you want to do better. You want to look at someone and compare yourself with that person. It's good to do that. But don't get stressed by it. You choose the path that you want, and I'm sure you'll figure out your way. For all you know, you'll end up as a professor here in Christ. Right? So anything could happen. And, but each of them have their pros and cons, and I'm sure you have to decide. So the next part of this journey and this set of slides that I'm going to take you through is some of the things that you need to keep in mind. Right? You are very likely to have an office that will have a slide coming through your office. Can you see the slide? Yes or no? Can't hear you. Yes or no? Okay. Just making sure you're not sleeping. Many of you are just going to stay working from home. You know, the last 2 years, I just taught us so much on how dirty a home can be. You know, many of us always thought that somebody is there taking care of the house, somebody is there, and whenever we come back, it's always neat, or we come back and we take the Sunday off to do it, etc. But when you start living in it, you know, there's more noise around you with people knocking nails, trying to bring a table into the room, etc. So I think some of you are also going to choose those options. Some of you are going to say, I want to go to an office. So if you ask me today, I'm a little old school. I've always believed that we should go to office, because that's where you learn. You learn from each other. When you stay at home, you can learn. I'm not denying that. There are so many options today to learn. But you tend to don't learn from each other. You learn from your own self-learning, which is a good thing, and which I'll talk about a little later as well. But I'm more of an office guy. So, but I'm sure there'll be people over here who would like to stay somewhere, happy at home, doing. I've got a colleague of mine in Sikkim, in Gangtok, and she's one of my best performers in the work that we do, but she's at home. And she continues to do a fabulous job. So I think there's going to be huge advantages and disadvantages in each of these options as well. The pandemic taught us that one thing is for sure, that nothing is certain, right? I was talking to a friend's brother who's around 24, 25 years old. I'm assuming all of you are on the same age? 22? 20, okay. Not too far, yeah, come on. So, I'm sorry? So around 2021, but I met this person, and he was telling me that this is the first time that he has seen a war. So I'm assuming a lot of you, this is the first time that you're reading about the Ukraine-Russian conflict, and many of you are trying to understand what really happens in a war. I think for the older generation, I guess we have kind of seen enough and more of this, whether it was the Middle East conflict or whether it was our own back of the yard civil wars in Bombay and all that stuff. But many of you, for you, it's the first time. But that was not very surprising to me because obviously it's been a long time since we had a war. But what surprised to me was the statement that he said after that. He said, I asked him, so what interests you about the war? Because obviously you're following it, and I'm sure all of you do as well. And he said, it doesn't impact me, so I just see the memes that come around the war. And that surprised me, the fact that the war itself is very damaging and very negative, but somewhere in the rest of the world, there is also a lot of memes that happen and make that a lightened story to talk about. So whether whether the dollar rate is improving or whether it is the oil barrel price coming down, if that was made funny or if that was made into a TikTok video, the consumption of that would be far faster than putting it up on a news website. So because the fact that none of you know Dilbert, I'm assuming nobody reads newspapers here, so that's okay, that's fine. So chaos is there. I think everything that we see around us today has got some uncertainty. So what does that mean for all of you who are possibly going to get a job? One, whatever happens in that job is functionally only because of what you can provide to that company. The company can shut down overnight. The company can go bankrupt. The company can send you to an international location. The company could promote you to become the next CEO. You could find an idea and start a company of your own. All these are today options that you need to be ready with, right? So then it boils down to just one point. When you work in a job, is who you're working with and the purpose of that person. So to just leave that thought with each of you, that who you're going to work with and what is that purpose of that person or that organization is very, very critical. I'll come back to that a little later. So this is how you're going to choose your career. Easy, right? Has anyone started, how many of your profiles are on LinkedIn today? Good. So where do you think it falls in this? This is exactly how your life's going to be here on. There is never going to be a structure on how your career journey is going to take place. But it's very, very important to understand one thing, is that you will have a career. Do not let go of the sight that wherever you are, that because you had a bad boss or you work for a bad company or you attended 200 interviews and never got a job, don't let that tear you apart. Functionally, all of you will have a career at some point of time. And it will happen. Why? Because that's the natural course of how you would eventually become more mature, become a leader and all that stuff, because that's the way we are all built to do things. So don't get stressed. Some of you, like I said, will become actors. Some of you will become painters. Some of you will become CEOs. Some of you are going to become investment bankers. That's all part of this journey. Don't get rugged into the fact that you have to follow a process. But there are a lot of people that will come and tell you that this is important. Put your CV here. Make sure that you do this. It's good to have, but may not necessarily define what you are. So, rule number 1. Know resilience very well. This is the key word that came out of the pandemic. I think this is the most favorite word that every single person used during the pandemic. And all of you, and I can assure all of you, you will have to be resilient not once, not twice. So we were very fortunate. I think my generation was a little more fortunate. It was maybe 2 or 3 times in my entire career journey that I had to be resilient. My take is that all of you will have to go through being resilient at least once or twice every year, because that's the speed at which things are changing today. And how do you figure that out? How do you put a framework around it? How do you process this, etc.? So, 4 things. I'll start with the be mindful part. I don't know if you've had courses around mindfulness in this course, but just know what you're feeling. I think it's extremely, extremely important to know what you're feeling, because a lot of us are stuck to social media and your phones throughout the day. A lot of us are tweeting, a lot of us are sitting on Facebook, a lot of us are sitting on Instagram almost 80% of our day. And sometimes you tend to get influenced on what you're feeling. You may not be very happy with what you're seeing, but because 10 others are laughing about it, you tend to laugh. And that's basically suppressing your real emotion and choosing the path of what. Some of them are the opposite. They'll want to prove that they're the opposite of the rest of the gang. That's also not good. What I'm trying to say here is that you should be mindful about the fact about what you all are feeling. If you call something out and if you're not feeling comfortable, you don't have to tell it out, but you should know it that you're not comfortable. But sometimes we tell ourselves, no, there's something wrong with me. I am happy, but you may not. Or I am sad. No, so, and that's where you find all these new age diseases that are coming, because people are not able to accept them, their own selves. They keep questioning what they're feeling and all that stuff. So that's the second, cultivate empathy. I think again, huge word that came out in the last 5 years, etc. People keep saying you have to feel, you have to act as though you're in the other person's shoes, etc. But my belief in building empathy is just assuming, or at least know that the other person that you talk to also feels something. So the same mindfulness, you should be aware that the other person also is feeling something. Otherwise what happens is that there's always a sense of fake conversations that happen. All of you saw that WhatsApp video, or the one that came on Tube on that McAdams issue? Any of you saw that? Must have seen it, right? Where the news reporter was calling someone else's out, Now, all of them became famous, but the only fact was nobody knew what each other was talking about. It was just on and off because of a wrong cue as such. Third, searching effectively. And this is something I'm going back to my earlier point. You may not get your best job in the first time. Please, don't assume that your first job is the best job, right? It can be, but don't assume. So use your search effectively. Know that you may be rejected a few times, and I'll talk about that a little later. But never get desperate. Your career journey is possibly 25, 30 years in whatever you do. That 25, 30 years, don't get desperate. There's so much more to offer in life. Don't get desperate and say, no, I have to get a job. Parents will put pressure, friends will put pressure. I understand that. It's important that you also understand what they're feeling. Understand the empathy part of it. But don't put yourself under pressure. The search will happen. There are firms like us, there are organizations that are looking for people. There are many global organizations that are coming to India. So there's always some job that's going to come, or some practice that's going to happen. So don't get desperate. And this is the last point which I love, changing the narrative. Now, most of you, during your first step of your career journey, and maybe through as you grow in the career ladder as well, you're going to constantly have disruptions, you're going to consistently have challenges, etc. So when we did our campus hiring, when the pandemic hit, the first thing that a lot of MBA students came to us and said, we are the worst and most unluckiest batch. Why? Because nobody was hiring. And there were a couple of students at the same college who came and told us that, we're very fortunate to be in the COVID batch, because we kind of see the world evolving around us, and we are seeing that as an opportunity to get a good job. So we know what is to be done here on, because now the world has changed around us. And I thought that is a brilliant way of changing the narrative. Both are saying the same thing. One saying that they are not happy because they're just unlucky, and there's another person saying, we may be unlucky, but this is an opportunity too. So just keep the narrative positive. And it's very, very important when you get into conversations, because I was just telling your colleagues here, your professors here as well, that many a time when I go to campus interviews, I look at only just two things. One is the ability to communicate. Know what is happening in your mind and the ability to say that out, and properly. And that, I think, is the most important thing, which is so easily avoidable. People just assume that if I've read the book 10 times, I can get a job. It all boils down to communication. Second, make sure that you have energy when you do the interview. So when you start interviewing with customers or companies, etc., I would only look at how much energy this person is bringing to the table. Is he excited about the job? Is he talking loudly? Is he really maybe putting some humor into it, etc.? It's so very important. Many a time, because many of us are just stuck to our phones, we've lost the ability to emote. We would rather send an emoji than to smile. So just keep that in mind. I'll come back to that a little later. And as you enter your organization, as you enter your companies, know the company, know its investors, know its employees. What's the culture of those organizations? Why is it that they're so big? Why is it that they're so small? What are their purposes? It's very important to know that. It helps you develop resilience. And then as you face challenges, you kind of know how to put your path together. A lot of people ask me this question as a recruiter. I started my career as a recruiter in 2003, and I've been hiring ever since. I have 1,000 odd recruiters that work with me every day. And it's important to know that when you send your CV to 100 odd companies, or when you apply to so many companies, many of them will not respond. Many of them will maybe call you and not follow up. So how do you, as prospective employees, do a follow-up? So if it says that you should not call them, and this is very common in international countries and a few companies in India, if it says that we will reach out to you, don't try to push your buttons. They will reach out. Don't get too stressed. Second, check if there's any time frame given to them. So a lot of companies will say, we'll come back to you within 7 to 10 days. We'll come back to you within 20 days. Now in this current market, this is a little tough because the market surge is there. So people get a huge amount of applications and then it takes a little longer. But remember time frames. Especially when you get into an interview, ask them, saying that I had a great interview and I hope you did too. But would be keen to know as to when would I see a response on it. And if they say 10 days, just wait for 10 days. Don't try to push the game after 2 days, say I didn't hear anything from you as such. Ask follow-up questions. I think it's very, very important as you start taking interviews. And do not allow the interviewer to always control the conversation. There are times when you can also control the conversation. This is negotiation 101. If you're getting into a negotiation, whether it is buying a fruit or a vegetable, or whether you're negotiating in a exhibition, etc., and all this stuff, remember who needs to control the conversation. It may not be easy in the beginning. As you do your first round of interviews, etc., and all this stuff, it may not be easy to always control the conversation, but follow-up questions are perfect. So let's say they asked you about your background, they asked you about your projects, they asked you about the work and what kind of job you want. Then you just say, I also had a question. Your organization does this, 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 and this. I want to know how this organization will evolve, say, 2-3 years from now. So what you're doing here is two things. One, you're now getting control of the conversation because now you've asked a question. And never ask a yes or a no question. Ask a question which they are forced to answer. Second, now the interviewer is getting a little impressed because now he's seeing that you're looking at them with a long-term opportunity. So you've got a slightly better tick mark against them, right? Or you can ask a question like a follow-up question saying that, I had a great interview and I learned a lot about your organization. You take the CEO's name and say, like for the benefit of doubt, let's say Narayana Murthy. I've seen Mr. Narayana Murthy's videos. I've been so impressed. It's a pleasure that I'm going to be part of your organization. But I just had this one question. How many people, when you do this interview process, what are your top 3 things that you expect as a candidate? And when I take the job, what are the top 2-3 things that you would expect? Now again, you're putting the client or the employer in a position to now start responding to you. The bridge is built and the connect happens, right? Does it make sense? Okay, cool. Yeah, of course, be polite and professional. I think that's a given. I was talking about learning that, ever since Google came, the concept of knowing has gone. You don't need to know anything anymore. I could sit with each one of you, and if I gave you a Google access, and if I were to ask you to tell me about the, World War II, and what are the comparative points of World War II and the Russia-Ukraine war, I can guarantee you, in 10 minutes you will find me some answers. Because Google will tell you that. So knowing is out of the window. I think there are people who make bombs, using Google. So knowing is out of the window. It's learning to learn that has lost its essence. With all this edtech coming into play, with a lot of learning options to each one of you, fantastic faculty trying to teach you what is to do, right? Just don't forget that if you have a passion towards something, just keep learning on that. Just trying to find out what happens over there. Social media in that way is a very, very strong incubator of learning. If you start following some topics and following some trends, you kind of tend to pick up a lot of things. Not the best coffee shop in the corner, no, that's not what I'm talking about learning. In terms of what you find interesting and you continue building on that. Podcasts are a great way of learning. If you enjoy talking, personally, if you enjoy sports and you would like to follow a certain sport, you have some great podcasts that talk about the sport. But that's all forms of learning. Now, why this is important and why I keep telling that, you have to learn is because this is what gets you a little ahead in life. Whatever you hear and whatever you learn, you can use it somewhere else. And that's when somebody else thinks, oh, this guy is smart, or this girl is smart, she knows what she's talking about. And if you stop doing that activity, then you kind of become a little numb. You start really learn, whatever the college taught you, that's about it, and you think that's enough. I hope they don't get angry at me, but in my 20 years of recruiting as a career, there are two things that I've learned. Marks don't matter. I really don't. I have been hiring for decades now, and not even a single customer has come to me and told me that I want a gold medalist. Right? It's the ability, the knowledge that they carry, I think, what matters. The ability to talk through an interview, the ability to do a job, the skills that you have equipped yourself with. So whether you're you should pass. That's important. Without a graduate, it's of no use. Right? The knowledge is critical. Learning that is very critical. But I don't think so marks will ever change your lives beyond a point as such. I've known tons of leaders who've wasted their ways through BCom, just got high and did nothing and watched movies. And at the end of the third year, they crammed themselves, got into IIM, and now they're working in some investment bank. That's all. At the end of the day, a lot of things just comes out to opportunity and how you leverage those opportunities as well. Know where to get references from. So I'll come a little bit later onto mentorship and coaching. I think that's going to be a very, very critical part of your journey, especially in today's world as such. I think this is the easiest slide and possibly the most boring slide. If you're getting comfortable with something, so let's say you're getting into a job and you find that the job is getting too easy and you're doing it again, then something's wrong in your learning process. Something's wrong in your career journey. You'll have to keep reinventing yourself in the job. Even as a CEO, my job is very mundane. Even as I manage a 1,000 crore business, but I largely just do approvals and clearances. So it's pretty boring, even if you go up the ladder. But how do you keep your job interesting is by dealing with people differently, by giving more ideas, running more strategic initiatives. You don't always have to start a company. I think a huge error that people are making today is that if they get bored in something, okay, let's start a company. Let's become an entrepreneur. Itna paisa ho raha hai that there must be something there. So we should start, not necessarily, you can be an entrepreneur too. You can be in a company and start something too, and do something different as well. So just be a little careful about getting comfortable in life. Family is taking care of things, food is coming on the table, milk is coming on, coffee and tea are there, you got enough money in your Swiggy balance, you got enough money in the bank account to take care of things. Be a little careful. That can get you a little too eased up when everyone around you is moving forward as such. I think this is also something which came out in the entire startup ecosystem, is your acceptance to failure. It's okay to fail, it's okay to learn from mistakes and knowing that failure, I think this is very common nowadays, so I'm not going to spend too much time over there. Right. I'm coming towards the end. So this is the single most important thing in the next 10 years of your life. Whatever you study, whatever you learn, whatever you have picked up, all that in another few years is just going to go away. What stays with you is your network. When I asked you the question a little earlier about how many of you are on LinkedIn, it becomes if you are not on LinkedIn today, you have a problem. If you're not on a networking site today, you have a problem. You need to be networked today. You need to know who are the people you can reach out to. You need to know who are your reference points for something. You might be getting into a job which coaches football teams. You might be getting into a job that's going to be into managing mergers and acquisitions. All that will boil down to certain processes. Everything will boil down to some process. But how you become better in life boils down to networking. So I've got a couple of pointers around networking. Know the social media place where you can network. Now, I'm not saying Instagram or Twitter are not networking places. I think they are also great networking places as well. But they tend to be a little more personal. LinkedIn and other sites like them tend to be a little more professional. So you kind of can have an engaging conversation with people and learn from each other and network with them. Hopefully with COVID behind us in many ways, the old school of events will happen. So many of you are in physics, chemistry, many of you are doing mathematics, many of you are doing BCA. To know what's happening in the world, do participate in these events. It takes 2 hours of your life or 3 hours of your life in that 1 month. But if you are aware that Bangalore has a conference down the road where they're going to talk about data sciences, all the mathematics guys in the rooms, all the BCA employees, all the BCA students in the room, make sure that you're participating there. So I think that really matters. This whole event that you're doing here is so fantastic because I'm assuming you guys are all using this opportunity not to stick with only your friends, but also meet other people. And I think that becomes extremely, extremely critical on how you learn. And I'll tell you why networking is so important in today's day and age, is because everyone will have to contribute to you in some way or the other. Okay, because if you tend to assume that only you drive your life, you're wrong. Not today. You'll have to depend every part of your journey on at least 20 to 25 different people. So if you, let's say for example, most common thing that people come to me saying, Vijay, I want career advice. And I ask them, okay, so what kind of career advice do you want to be? What do you want to become? Then I want to become a CEO. One person cannot solve that problem. It's not easy for one person to stand up and say, you do X, A, B, C, D, and you become a CEO tomorrow. It's not going to work. There'll be elements of your journey in the last 3 years that you've been studying. You would have got very subtle feedback points from your friends. Some of them would have said, hey, you talk too loudly. I'm not able to understand you clearly. You're very aggressive. You're very angry all the time. Many of you would have got subtle feedbacks in your last 3 years. Identify those gaps that you've seen or those feedbacks that you've got. You don't have to tell anyone, but you know it in your head. And then you start identifying networks that will help you improve that. So if you think communication, for example, is an area where people have advised you, say, you're always by himself. He never talks to people. And you have to be an extrovert to be a good communicator or networker. Introverts are also fantastic networkers. In fact, introverts do better because they know exactly who they have to network with. It's the extroverts who go blah, 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 blah. Right? So they are the ones who get lost in the way. And I'm an extrovert. So the importance is to make sure that you network with the right set of people and how they are going to help you. Now, the second question that people always tell me, Vijay, I'm on LinkedIn. I keep connecting with a lot of senior people, but they don't add me. They don't respond to my messages. It's going to happen. Because unless the other person thinks of helping you or is seeing some advantage from you. So to give you an example, let's say there's a bunch of the BCA folks. Who are the BCA folks? Raise your hand. Come on. So let's say you're working on something on DevOps, okay, or full stack, and you're working on a front-end engine or something on AI, ML, whatever it is. If you write to someone on LinkedIn, let's say the head of AI of Cisco, and you write to him and say that, hi, I just completed this whole program in Christ University, and I was very intrigued by your video on this. I did a very similar thing and I had a similar idea. I'd like to run it by you. Would you accept my connection? 9 out of 10 times, my bet is the person will accept your connection. But most of the time, what happens is you would send connect. I'd like to add you to my network. Nobody's going to work it out. So it's a bridge. You'll have to give some to take some. And this is going to happen more often as you complete more years in the job. There are going to be people who are going to reach out to you. Again, when you choose who to add, who to not add, it also depends on what value you want to earn from that person. And sometimes you can be giving. You can choose to add people because you think you can help someone. So today, on an average, I think most of my colleagues and myself, we receive at least 10 to 20 LinkedIn invitations a day. Right? So to get there, you will have to make sure that you network a lot more as well. The small bulb that I'm showing there, I think this is the second part of your leg, which again becomes very, very important. You need to have a mentor and you need to have a coach. And they're two different things. A coach is someone who's going to get you help better professionally. So when you're in a job, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine works for Adidas in Germany. Now, he's already a senior guy. I think he heads digital or something like that in Adidas. The organization has identified a coach for him who is the CEO of US, Adidas. Right? Now, actually, they don't have an interlink. But the reason they did that was because they want him to grow into some role similar to that. And so the CEO coaches him on that front. So a coach is very important to guide you through your career journey. Now, how do you identify a coach? How do you get a coach that is most relevant to you? So again, as you enter your workforce, as you see people who are role models, who you say, wow, that guy is so awesome at his job, you start identifying coaches who are similar to him or the person himself. So make sure at any given point of time, starting today, you have at least one coach with you, guiding you. And for that, don't call the coach every day. Don't make that mistake of haunting the coach. Make it once a quarter, maybe once in 6 months also, right? But that conversation should be something that, Vijay, you're my coach. Can you help me on 1, 2, 3, 4? And then that coach will take you through what his experiences or her experiences are, right? And then you learn from that and you pick only what you are finding relevant to. Don't pick everything. Sometimes coaches can go a little overboard as well. Second is mentoring. Mentoring is when you start picking up skills. Okay, but the world defines it everywhere in different ways. I talked about a little earlier about communication skills. Again, huge gap today where people cannot communicate. Identify mentors who can help you with it. It could be a faculty member. It could be a business leader. It could be a great friend. A guy who you know or a girl you know who speaks so well. Just work with them and bet on those few things that you want to improve on. So having a mentor and having a coach is going to be a very, very critical thing. So I'm just boiling down to these 2 points that if you're not networking today, you're going to miss a lot of things in life. If you're not having a coach or a mentor today, again, you're going to miss. And you can start with someone small. Your coaches and mentors will change through your life. Till date, possibly, I'm assuming again, till date, your best coach was your mom or your dad. Your best mentor was your mom or your dad, or possibly your siblings. That will change. You'll find coaches that will advise you, guide you, and stuff like that, and make it a point to make sure that you are connected to them at some point. So that was my last slide. I'll just summarize. So don't get stressed on what the career is in front of you. For those in technology, there's a huge technology surge that's happening. Find the right job, find the right company. But more importantly, it is not just the Java or the .NET that will get you a job. It is the communication that will get you the job. It is the way you negotiate, the way you articulate what you want that will get you the job. So those things become very important. Third, don't lose out on energy, guys. I think the whole fact that all of you are here today, the whole fact that, when I was walking from the gate to here, the amount of energy, when that can happen on the floor, why not happen at an interview? Why not happen with a company? Don't lose that out. And fourth, don't forget to network. Don't forget to have a coach or a mentor. I hope it helped. Right? Any questions? Happy to take some.
Thank you so much, sir, for an eye-opening session. I'm sure we all had immense takeaways and infinite learnings from today. I now request Professor Benny Sebastian, Coordinator of University Student Council, School of Sciences, to hand over a token of our appreciation.
Sir? So I got what I came for. If there's any questions? Or you guys clear now? Career is smooth now, no stress. Cool, no questions? Good. So I'm not going to stand between you and your lunch, but it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. If there's anything that you guys need, I am available on LinkedIn. Feel free to get connected and do well wherever you are. Don't forget from where you come from. Take care.
We have now come to the end of today's event. Have a lovely day. Please be seated till the dignitary